He thought she'd be easy. Another mouthy black woman with no backup, no badge, no voice that mattered. What he didn't know was that Naomi Ellison had spent half her life preparing for this exact moment. The highway was quiet that night, the kind of silence that creeps under your skin. Just past 11 p.m., Alabama sky heavy with rain, streetlights flickering like nervous blinks. Naomi had been driving for hours, fingers drumming to a jazz tune, eyes on the road, mind drifting somewhere between fatigue and focus. Black sweater, worn jeans, no uniform, just another silhouette in the dark. Until the lights hit. Red, blue, flashing fast. A siren howl tearing through the night like a warning shot. She didn't panic. She didn't run. She sighed, signaled, pulled over, hands on the wheel, 10 and 2. Exactly how they trained her. Exactly how she'd trained others. The white patrol car rolled up slow behind her. The driver didn't rush, didn't need to. He already knew how this would go. He was the one with the badge. And she was supposed to forget who she was. He stepped out, heavy boots, flashlight, hand already near the holster. Not drawn, but close enough to send a message. Nameplate Maddox, Officer Cole Maddox, license and registration. No greeting, no reason, just command. Naomi didn't argue, didn't ask why. She moved slow, deliberate, pulled the documents from her glove box, eyes on the mirror the entire time. Was I speeding, officer? He didn't answer, just held her papers like she was lucky he didn't toss them. Then flatly, tail lights out. She frowned. That can't be. He cut her off. You arguing with me? A beat. The air changed. That quiet snap. The moment where power steps forward and expects you to kneel. But Naomi had been in combat zones. Had stood in briefing rooms in Afghanistan. Had faced men with bombs strapped to their chests and hearts full of vengeance. She wasn't about to fold for a man with a badge and a bruised ego. I'm just saying, she replied evenly. My car was checked last week. Step out of the car. His voice was flat, dead cold. And suddenly, it wasn't about a taillight anymore. It was about control. She glanced up the road. No witnesses, no traffic. Just her and a man who believed the law was his personal weapon. And Naomi? She took one slow breath, then reached for the door handle. Because she knew something he didn't. He had just made the biggest mistake of his career. What happens when a man with a badge tries to silence the wrong woman? The night air wrapped around Naomi as she stepped out. Cool. Still. Unforgiving. She didn't slam the door, didn't raise her voice, but her spine straightened. And with it, the invisible wall between obedience and dignity. Officer Maddox watched her with narrowed eyes. Flashlight trained on her like a spotlight in a one-woman interrogation. Turn around, hands on the car. She paused, just long enough. For what reason? His jaw twitched. That was the problem. She didn't flinch, didn't fold, and in men like him, that always sparked something ugly. He stepped closer, smirk gone. Are you resisting? Naomi didn't move. She simply said, calm as a surgeon mid-operation. No. I'm asking a question. That's when it shifted. Not just in him, but in the night itself. He reached for his radio, speaking low like he wanted her to hear just enough to feel the threat. We got a non-compliant driver here. Then louder, turn around! She could feel her heartbeat. Slow, steady. Like a drum keeping pace with every decision she had to make. Comply and fight this later. Or push back and become a headline. She chose survival. With measured grace, she turned. Placed her hands on the hood. Cool metal met warm skin. The cuffs snapped around her wrists, too tight on purpose. He didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. The sound of metal and plastic said it all. I win. Naomi bit the inside of her cheek, didn't cry out, didn't curse, because this wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated. But it just might be the last time someone got away with it. Maddox shoved her into the back of the patrol car. "You don't know what you're doing," she said under her breath. He chuckled, buckling himself in. "Lady, I know exactly what I'm doing." But he didn't. Not even close. He didn't know that she was Lieutenant Commander Naomi Ellison. 15 years in the US Navy. Fluent in 2 languages. Decorated twice for combat operations. Trusted by more than one 3-letter agency. But tonight, none of that mattered. Because to Maddox, and to systems built like him, she wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a citizen. She was just a woman who didn't say "yes, sir" fast enough. The engine roared. The patrol car pulled into the night. Red and blue lights lit up the empty highway, painting the road in shame. And as Maddox drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting near his holster, Naomi stared through the window. Silent, still, waiting. Because sometimes justice starts in the backseat of a cop car. The patrol car swerved back onto the road, its sirens still flashing even though there was no emergency. Only ego. Maddox drove like he was taking a victory lap. Casual, confident, whistling an off-key tune as if the woman in the back seat was a trophy, not a person. Naomi didn't speak. She didn't give him the satisfaction, but her wrists ached. The cuffs were biting into her skin, cutting past the muscle into something deeper. Something psychological. She wasn't afraid of pain. She had crawled through desert heat under sniper fire. She had stitched wounds mid-mission. She had faced men who hated her for more than her skin or her silence. But this was different. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a back road in Alabama. And this time, the enemy didn't need a gun, just a badge. After 10 minutes of silence, Maddox finally spoke. "Most people just shut up and do what I say," he muttered, eyes on the road. Naomi didn't flinch. He smirked, tapping his fingers on the wheel. "You military? Got that attitude?" Still no answer. "Yeah, I figured. Thought I'd back off if you dropped that, huh?" He looked into the rearview mirror. "You really think being somebody makes you untouchable?" She met his eyes in the mirror, her voice soft but sharp. "No, I know it doesn't." That paused him, just for a beat. His hands tightened on the wheel, jaw clenching, that mask of control slipping for a fraction of a second. Then it was back. He chuckled bitterly. "Should have kept your mouth shut. We could have avoided this." Her jaw tightened. Because that's what men like him always said. Blame the woman for not letting the man get away with it. The police station came into view. A squat brick building with no soul, just fluorescent lights and faded authority. He parked, opened her door without a word. "Let's go." Naomi stepped out, wrist bones grinding, head held high. He paraded her past the desk sergeant like she was prey. Booking, fingerprints, mugshot. Eyes barely glanced at her. Staff moving like machines. No one asked why. No one cared. That was the worst part. Not the cuffs. Not the cold bench and holding. But the indifference. The kind that lets men like Maddox thrive. The kind that looks the other way while injustice wears a uniform. He shoved her toward the cell. The bars slammed shut with a finality that echoed louder than the gavel she hoped to one day hear. Maddox smirked from the other side. "Enjoy your stay." Naomi sat slowly on the bench. It was cold, hard, unforgiving, but she was still breathing. Still calculating. Because she knew. This wasn't over. This was just page 1. He thought he had caged her, but she was just waiting for the door to swing the other way. The cell was dimly lit, the overhead bulb flickering like it wasn't sure whether to die or survive the night. Naomi sat motionless on the cold bench, eyes open, spine straight, every breath slow and intentional. This wasn't the first time she'd been confined, but it was the first time it was done not by enemies, but by a system she once swore to protect. She listened to the low hum of tired conversation near the front desk, to the scrape of boots on linoleum, to the faint laughter. Officer Maddox, no doubt, basking in the glow of unchecked power. But she knew something he didn't. People were watching, not the ones in this precinct. No, the ones above them. The ones who didn't wear local badges. The ones with stars on their shoulders and satellite phones in their pockets. 15 minutes passed, then 20, then footsteps. Heavy, confident, arrogant. She didn't need to see his face. It was Maddox. She could hear the entitlement in his stride. He appeared in front of her cell like a bad monologue. Comfy? Naomi didn't answer. He stepped closer to the bars. You know, he smirked. This didn't have to go down like this. If you just played along. She looked at him. Not with fear, not even with anger. With precision. And when she spoke, it was like dropping ice into boiling water. Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be. For a second, something shifted. His smirk cracked, barely, but it was there. That tiny flicker of uncertainty. Before he could respond, another voice echoed from the hallway. Younger, nervous. An officer holding a clipboard, eyes darting. Sergeant? He hesitated. We got a call. Maddox barely turned his head. So, from the Office of Naval Intelligence, sir. Silence. Real silence. Even the flickering bulb seemed to stop humming. Naomi didn't move. She didn't have to. Because this wasn't about her credentials anymore. This was about how far her name traveled when someone tried to bury it. Maddox muttered something and disappeared down the hallway. But Naomi heard the shift. He wasn't strutting anymore. He was sweating. She leaned back slightly, rolled her shoulders. Let the ache in her wrists remind her of what came next. Because in that moment, sitting alone in a holding cell built for shame, Naomi Ellison felt none. Only calm, only timing. And soon, the man who thought no one would ever question him would have to explain himself to everyone. Sometimes justice doesn't knock, it makes a phone call. Naomi could hear voices outside. Hushed, urgent, unsteady. The officer with the clipboard sounded nervous. His words tangled in protocol and panic. Maddox's voice, though lower, carried something sharper. Fear wrapped in defiance. She couldn't catch every word, but she heard enough. Who called them? She didn't say anything. This doesn't make sense. Then the door opened. He was back, but this time he wasn't smiling. Maddox stormed toward her cell, fists clenched, chest puffed like he was trying to hold on to the last breath of control. What the hell did you do? Naomi didn't flinch. She tilted her head, calm as ever. I didn't do anything. Then, almost kindly. But people talk. And some of us have friends in very high places. His face darkened. The color drained, then returned. Hot, red, furious. She watched it happen. The unraveling. The moment when a man realizes the badge on his chest can't stop the walls from closing in. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He just turned and walked away. Fast. Like the hallway might somehow offer an escape route from accountability. Naomi exhaled. Her wrists still ached, her shoulders still stiff from the cold bench. But now, something deeper shifted. The balance. The next morning, sunlight cut across the marble floor of the courthouse like a scalpel. Everything inside felt sterile, too clean, like a lie waiting to be disinfected. Naomi stood beside her attorney, Veronica Sharp. Sharp by name, sharper by nature. No words, no fluff, just precision. Naomi wore navy, not a jumpsuit, not cuffs, but a suit that fit like armor. She didn't look like a woman who'd spent the night behind bars. She looked like someone about to own the room. Then, the doors opened. Officer Maddox walked in. Same uniform, same haircut, but none of the same arrogance. He looked smaller. Not physically, but spiritually. Like something in him had been exposed to light and shrunk in shame. He avoided Naomi's gaze. Good. Because the woman standing across from him wasn't the one he dragged out of her car the night before. She was every woman he'd ever underestimated. The judge entered. Walter Emmerich, old, pale, and tired, but not indifferent. And as the court came to order, Naomi saw it. In Maddox's fidgeting, in the way Veronica calmly flipped through her notes. Something was about to shift. But before that shift could come, Maddox had one last card to play. One last attempt to reclaim the lie. And Naomi was ready, because she didn't need the system to believe her. She just needed it to watch. The truth doesn't beg. It just waits for its turn. The courtroom was silent. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for attention, because it already owns it. Naomi stood still, calm, unapologetic, not defiant, just undeniably present. Veronica Sharp rose first. No greetings, no drama. Your Honor, she began, voice clipped. We're submitting a motion to dismiss all charges against Lieutenant Commander Naomi Ellison due to unlawful detainment, excessive force, and abuse of authority by the arresting officer, Sergeant Cole Maddox. A ripple moved through the room. Maddox stiffened in his seat, but said nothing. The prosecutor stood, middle-aged, pressed suit, eyebrows furrowed with discomfort. But what he said next turned discomfort into detonation. We've also received internal reports indicating a disturbing pattern in Officer Maddox's arrest history. Another ripple. Naomi didn't move. She didn't smile. She just let it land, like a truth long overdue. The judge raised an eyebrow. Explain. The prosecutor cleared his throat. Over the past 18 months, Sergeant Maddox has conducted 47 roadside arrests, 38 of which involved black drivers. Maddox shifted, hands twitching, lip tightening. Judge Emmerich sighed. That's statistically improbable. Then, the final blow. And we have body cam footage, the prosecutor added, of the incident in question. The screen lowered at the front of the courtroom. No one looked away, not even Maddox, because deep down, he knew what was coming. The footage played. Naomi stepping out of her car, polite, clear, calm. Maddox barking orders, dismissing her, twisting her wrist harder than necessary. The smirk, the swagger. His tone dripped with entitlement. The silence in the courtroom was thick, not because people were shocked, but because they weren't. They had seen this before, heard it before, felt it in their bones. But this time, there was evidence. When the video ended, Judge Emmerich leaned forward, fingers steepled. Sergeant Maddox, he said slowly, you violated protocol. You made an unlawful arrest, and you failed to accurately report the incident. Maddox opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. She resisted. The judge cut him off. The footage says otherwise. Then, with a quiet authority that filled the room, charges against Lieutenant Commander Ellison are dismissed. Effective immediately. He didn't slam the gavel. He didn't need to. The sound of the truth hitting the floor was loud enough. Naomi exhaled. Not relief, release. The weight hadn't broken her. It had sharpened her. She turned, not to Maddox, but toward the doors. Because her fight wasn't against a man. It was against a system that let him believe he could win. But the system had just watched one of its own collapse. On camera. The courthouse hallway echoed with footsteps. Not rushed, not panicked, just heavy. Like the weight of everything Maddox had built was finally pressing down on his shoulders. He walked fast, trying not to show it. trying not to hear the murmurs behind him, the whispers from court clerks, the stares from reporters, the way even other officers didn't make eye contact. The badge on his chest felt heavier than ever. Not because it meant authority, but because it no longer meant protection. Sergeant Maddox. The voice cut through the hallway like a scalpel. He turned. Chief Marcus Ridley stood with arms crossed, flanked by two other senior officers. Older, calm, stone-faced. Ridley had been with the department over 30 years. His word wasn't just policy, it was gospel. Maddox straightened. "Sir." Ridley didn't blink. "My office, now." The door shut behind them. A long pause. Then Ridley tossed a file on the desk. It landed with a sound that said finality. "What the hell were you thinking?" Maddox swallowed hard. "I followed procedure. Don't lie to me." The chief's voice dropped an octave. Low, cold, surgical. He tapped the folder. Body cam footage. Arrest reports. The part where you didn't even know who you were arresting. Maddox's jaw tensed. "What does that matter?" Ridley leaned forward. "It matters because she's a decorated officer. Because she knew her rights. Because she didn't break any laws. A beat. And because you didn't care." Silence. "Internal Affairs is opening a full investigation. Effective immediately. You're suspended without pay." Maddox flinched. The words hit harder than a punch. "This is bullsh." "Don't finish that sentence." Ridley's voice turned to ice. "This department won't burn for your ego." He stood. "You thought you'd scare her. Thought you'd win. But instead, you made her visible. And that was it. No ceremony, no warnings, just consequences, real ones." Maddox walked out of the office, stripped of everything except the weight of his own disgrace. Across town, Naomi sat in a quiet cafe. A message from Veronica lit up her phone. "He's suspended. Might face charges." She took a slow sip of coffee. Good. She looked out the window. The city moving around her like nothing had happened. But something had. A woman had refused to stay silent. A man in uniform had finally been forced to answer for it. And the system, for once, had blinked. Some men use badges like shields, but today, the shield shattered. The air outside was crisp, cool breeze weaving through the city like a reset button. Naomi walked with her blazer buttoned tight, her boots clicking steadily against the sidewalk. Not rushed, not loud. Just present. Across the street, two young black boys laughed as they tossed a football between them. Carefree, full of life. She paused, watched them for a moment, let the sound of their joy settle into her bones. That was why she didn't back down. Not just for herself, but for them. Inside the Pentagon, a different conversation was taking place. Her phone rang. Lieutenant Commander Ellison? It was her former CO. Calm, calculated. But even over the phone, there was a trace of something deeper. Respect. "I assume you've heard," he said. "The Department of Defense is taking interest in your case. They may want you to speak." Naomi exhaled slowly. "I'm not sure I'm interested in being a headline." A pause. Then, "Too late, you already are." Later that evening, she sat with her niece. 12 years old, bright-eyed, always asking questions. They were watching the news replay footage from the courtroom. Maddox avoiding eye contact. Naomi standing tall. Her niece pointed to the screen. "That's you?" Naomi nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. The girl tilted her head. "Were you scared?" Naomi paused, then replied, "I wasn't scared of him. I was scared of what happens when we stop standing up." Her niece didn't speak, just looked at her, the way kids look when they realize the world is bigger, and that someone like them can shape it. In cities across the country, people were talking, not because Naomi screamed, not because she cursed, but because she stood still when it mattered most, and the world finally had to move around her. Somewhere in a small police precinct, a new recruit asked a question during training. What happens if we pull over the wrong person? And the room fell quiet, because now they knew justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks, deliberate, precise, unshaken, and when it does, it leaves a trail for others to follow. Naomi Ellison wasn't trying to be a hero. She was trying to get home. And now, so many more might actually make it there. If this story moved you, if it stirred anger, hope, or pride, then you already know why voices like Naomi's matter. We share these stories not to entertain, but to awaken, to remind you that silence serves no one, and that every system, no matter how big, can be held accountable when one person dares to speak. Subscribe to KaYi for more raw, real, and unforgettable stories that challenge injustice and light the path forward, because the next story might be yours.